Live from New York, it's Ask an Engineer.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Ask Engineer. Moving to a slightly choked up Ask Engineer. It's me,
You promised you wouldn't cry.
I don't.
I know.
I'd like to thank the Academy. I'm Lady Ada, the engineer. With me, Mr. Lady Ada on camera control, behind the scenes, AV, and all that good stuff. We are here at the Adafruit factory that's behind us. It's not a green screen. That's really a factory. This is where there's over 100 people working day and not night to test, kit, ship, video, product, code, etc. All the electronic goodies that you love in the Adafruit shop, all the open source stuff that we do, all the tutorials that we release. Right now, it's nighttime. Everyone's home except for us because it's time for Ask Engineer. We're going to be going through 1 hour of what's going on in making, hacking, engineering, and more. Tune in. We've got all sorts of stuff going on, including discount codes.
On tonight's show, speaking of, the code is gas sensor. 10% off the Adafruit store all the way up to 11:59 p.m. tonight. Get you anything that we have in stock. It'll give you a discount. We'll talk about some of our live series of shows, including Show and Tell. We just did that a few moments ago. Time travel, look around the world, makers, hackers, artists, engineers. We have some special segments tonight. Since things are starting to come back in stock, we have our new segment, The Real World. Check that out. From the Mailbag, we'll read some of your emails and letters and more to us. We got some main New York City factory footage and more, some 3D printing. Down page, we're going to show some cool stuff. We've got Eye on MPI, brought to you by DigiKey. This week, it is an Ocean. New products. We're going to answer your questions. We do that over on Discord, adafruit.it/Discord, where you can join all 35,000 of us. All that tomorrow. All that tonight.
Tonight
all that and more. I'm just going to combine words on Ask an Engineer. Okay, so first up, Lady Ada, when people put stuff in their cart, not only do you get a discount, but they get free stuff. What do they get?
That's right. We have the freebies, $99 or more. Our classic PermaProto half-size breadboard freebie is still there. Take your project from a solderless breadboard to a solderful breadboard with the PermaProto. It's a great way to make your projects more durable. I wish I'd had these in school. $149 or more. We're still giving away PCBs, pink circuit boards. KB2040 is an RP2040 based board. It's got 8 megabytes of flash. It's got STEM QT connector, buttons, castellated pad, USB-C, all the good stuff. It kind of designed for keyboards, which is why it's called the KB2040, but you can use it for all sorts of things. $199 or more, you get free UPS ground shipping in the continental United States. It's trackable, it's insured, it's UPS. And $299 or more, we're still giving away a Circuit Playground. This time it's a Circuit Playground Bluefruit. It's got Bluetooth low energy, lots of LEDs, button sensors, and more. It's a great solderless way to learn how to code or do engineering and IoT. And it's got Bluetooth low energy, so you can do wireless stuff with it too.
All right. And don't forget, we're still doing the two-factor authentication on our site. We do verified email accounts, two-factor authentication that allows you to buy things like the Raspberry Pi, which are still in short supply. It also keeps your account safe, and you probably noticed everybody in the world is getting emails that say, make sure you secure your account in one way, shape, or form. Adafruit offers account verification and two-factor authentication. If you haven't already on all your other things besides Adafruit, because you probably already did Adafruit, please do. I got an email today from one of the banks we use, multiple different companies that we interact with, and all of them are like, people will call you and ask for your password. That's not us. You'll get emails that look like different ones. They're not us. Oh, by the way, here's the latest disclosure thing last week or this week was Uber stuff was happening. Some Grand Theft Auto footage is leaked. 'Tis the season. So computers like to share their bits. That's why we made them. So
they're very bad at keeping secrets.
Yeah, they're called servers, but they're actually keepers. They have everything on there. So anyways, be safe, everyone. We do a bunch of live shows. We just finished up our show a few moments ago.
Yeah, we did Show and Tell.
We
hosted it.
We hosted it this week. For Show and Tell, there's lots that were
we had robots.
Great on there. Yeah, there's lots of great stuff on there. However, I'm going to say, if you're interested in Raspberry Pi Pico W, or Pi Cow, as it's referred to, check it out. Jeff Jepler has got the start on CircuitPython for PyCows. So if you want to use CircuitPython, we're making Wi-Fi way too easy. So that's what's going to happen. So sorry, you're gonna save all this time instead of fiddling around in Wi-Fi.
It's coming.
It's here. So check it out. You can do it now. You can watch after the show. You can also check out the UF2 that Jeff dropped in Discord and try it out for yourself. A lot of people have these PyCows and they want to do cool stuff with it.
Get all the powerful drivers and capabilities of CircuitPython with Wi-Fi.
Okay, we do Desk of Lady 8 every Sunday, and we're going to do kind of a deeper dive, as they say, on Penguin. But what did you talk about in part one?
Well, the part one, I did talk about Penguin a bit. So we showed off a demo of this new software that Phil B wrote for me because I was tired of asking him to constantly do silk screens for me. Not that there's anything wrong with that. He's very good at it. But, there's a lot of boards and I wanted to redo all the silk screens. So I showed off and talked a little bit about how EagleCAD, which is the CAD software I use for PCBs, handles fonts or doesn't.
And we'll go over that in the guide section.
Yes.
And then we do the Great Search, where Lady Ada uses her powers of engineering and part searching to search for things on digikey.com. What was the Great Search this week?
Okay, so this week there's a diode that we use for like almost all of our power supply boards. All the boards that we have a power supply circuit in them, and almost all of them use this diode, the MBR120VL. It's out of stock at DigiKey. It's weird. Like the silicon shortage is it's kind of like up and down. Like there's some parts that are really easy to get, some parts that are really hard. Oddly enough, I couldn't get this diode, so I was looking for an alternative, and there was a couple little tricks of how I found a good alternative. The initial way I did it did not find me anything in stock, but then I went around the back door and found a couple really good options.
Okay. JP's product pick of the week. We do this every single Tuesday. Here is this week's highlight. Take it away, JP.
The 10 and the 6 solid core hookup wire spool sets. These are 22 AWG, and they are perfect for breadboarding and prototyping. We get white, black, gray, brown, dark purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. Look at the set of 6. You get the blue, white, green, yellow, red, and black. Here's how you use them. So I will just take a little bit off of the ends of my wire and end up running them like that. The solid core, this gauge works great. 22 AWG works great for pressing them in and getting a solid connection. This isn't falling out easily. I first built this on a breadboard, then I just moved it over to the PermaProto and was able to make sense of my wiring and match my fritzing diagram. That's my product pick of the week. This week it is the 10 and 6 spool hookup wire set, solid core.
Okay, JumpWorks Workshop is tomorrow, and then Friday we have Deep Dive with Tim. So let's do some time traveling. Stuff on our blog and more this week I want to talk about. So it is September, and for this month, you'll see all the posts we have for National Hispanic Heritage Month 2022. If there's people's stories or inventors or scientists, artists, musicians, do check it out.
Maybe students you want to suggest us.
Yeah, so it's us using our blog, which is pretty popular, to help put the spotlight on some amazing folks. So check it out. You could see our posts that we have so far this year, and then you could see our previous years as well. We usually have whatever celebration is going on each month for the groups of people that not only work here at Adafruit, but for everyone that's in our community as well. So stop on by. AdaBox update. The update is there is no update. However, we're getting closer to having an update. So here's what we're thinking of doing. Depending on how much the chip shortage continues to maybe settle down a little bit, we're starting to get some stuff, but it is still hard to get like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 plus. We're either going to try to do the winter edition, or we're just going to punt to 2023. Don't worry, we don't charge AdaBoxes until we ship them. But what we would do is actually send out an email for that, because we don't like to be in your inbox for no reason if there's nothing actionable to do. We have plenty of sign-ups, so if you want to pop out and come back later, you probably will be able to, but there is a waiting list. So
we are seeing a bit of a relaxation of the part shortage, but ever since for the last 6 months we've been on allocation, which means that we can't, even if we have the parts on order, they may not get shipped to us.
It's getting better.
It's getting a little better.
And so, in celebration of getting a little bit better, we usually have a chip shortage video. This week, we're going to continue with the new series, which is called The Real World, which is when we get some parts on a reel.
This is the true story of 9 strangers taken place to live in a factory, to manufacture together, and have their lives taped. To find out what happens when people stop being polite and start getting real. Adafruit, the real world.
Okay, Lady Ada, what part did we get back in stock this week?
Okay, we got a mega amount of the MMA 8451. This 14-bit accelerometer, I don't exactly know why people love it so much, but it's like we had so many back orders and from resellers, and a lot of people signed up for it. And we have a lot in stock again. This was a last time buy, and last time buys that occurred, in 2020/2021 were very precarious because it was one of those like, will you actually get it? I don't know. Let's wait a year and a half and find out. But they must have did a big die run, and we, got a couple thousand chips. And so if you've been waiting for the MMA 8451, check it out. You're going to see it appear at distributors and at Adafruit. There actually are, it's funny because we kind of alternate chip shortage and real world videos, but there's actually quite a few boards that are back in stock, things that have been out of stock for quite a bit. Not everything, but you're going to see a lot more chips and sensors. We had some B&O 055s. We had, we're still trying to get some SAMD 51s, but we did get some SAMD 21s.
Yeah.
So some like Neo Trinkies went back into stock. So
we're getting there. And also, I know that folks are addicted to pain and suffering and complaining. We're not. We're looking forward to only having real world episodes of things that we're getting back in stock. Chip shortage was fun to educate folks what was happening. We wanted to be able to look back in time and say, oh, that was interesting. We tried to work with the companies. We're like, here's what we need. Here's what we use it for. There was no dunking, no shaming or anything. But it can't be complaining and bad news forever. So when we're getting more stuff in stock, we're going to continue to alternate. Like if we need stuff, we'll say this is what we still can't get. And then if we have things and we're starting to get stuff, we'll do a real world segment. So that's where that comes from.
Very exciting that this chip came back into stock. Yay!
Yeah.
It's possible.
Okay. Mailbag.
Letters. We get letters. We get tweets and we get emails. Your comments via RSS. They are the
Okay, mailbag. So this week, Eric sent us a note. Your shipping boxes make really awesome Project Stork boxes, and I look forward to receiving them. It's fun to try to get the different sizes. If you cut a GPO-sized rectangle in a small box, you can push the Pi Zero headers out from the inside and put a bonnet on the outside with plenty of room to spare. Easy Pi case with just a sharp object. You can add holes for buttons, wires, etc.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Python on hardware time. Okay, this week on the Python on Hardware newsletter, we cover everything because we do.
Yeah, I actually throw a lot of like Lisp and Scheme and Rust stuff into the newsletter too.
It is a like programming newsletter, I think, because if you're doing coding, microcontrollers is that little pocket universe that you could do a lot of stuff with. Anyways, the OG Arduino IDE is out, a new one. 2.0.
Looks
so
good.
Yeah, and so Arduino's already been kind of moving to Python land anyways, so we wanted to have some coverage on that. So you can check that out if you use Arduino. Obviously we've been doing a lot of Python stuff, but we're still the top library producer for Arduino. So have at it.
Yeah, we did a bunch of libraries recently.
Yep. Of course, Deep Dive is this Friday coming up with Tim. CircuitPython Parsec with JP, CircuitPython show if you have not already seen it or downloaded yet or got it on your pod catching device or however and whatever you use to download and look and see videos or audio. Thea Flowers was the latest person on the CircuitPython show, so do check it out. Becky, who I used to work with at Make and here at Adafruit, has a new series with DigiKey. Do check that out. And then lots of other Pi related things. Tom's Hardware has their 100th PyCast. They do a lot of cool Raspberry Pi content and more. Some Python tips.
Ooh, this F string thing is can never remember F
Yeah.
strings. I have to look them up every single time.
So handy resources from our team. Our community help desk is back on September 26th. So if you want any help with CircuitPython, come on by. It's going to be part of, Hacktoberfest-ish.
If people want to get T-shirts in October, get ready, get your pull requests in. We will take valuable. I feel bad saying valuable, but we'll take pull requests that are not simple typo fixes, which has happened in the past. Get a couple PRs in and you get a free T-shirt. And
a lot of projects using some Adafruit stuff. But this week, highlight of the week I wanted to show, this is from Geek Mom's project.
Oh, yeah, this orb is cool.
Yeah, so this is an orb. It's called Tiny Orb or Cube Orb. And she has a really nice set of progress photos and how it was built, all the 3D printing. It's powered by CircuitPython. And you can get an idea of what a cool project you could build with 3D printer, CircuitPython, open source hardware and software, and you could just see
So what's funny about this is we did that cube project. Phil B and Owen Pedro did an amazing LED cube, 64 by 64, panels, 6 of them, and it's I was we're done. We did the cube, and then Geek Mom is this mic drop. Time for orbs.
Here's round.
Time for orbs, and I'm no, now we have to make orbs.
So
this is really fun, though. It's actually I'm actually this is a little more fun than a cube.
Yeah. So check out if you haven't. Geek Mom Project's pretty much the best thing on Twitter. So do check it out. And that is our newsletter. We deliver this every single week into your inbox.
Orb.
And you can go to adafruitdaily.com. You can sign up for it. It's completely separate. Has nothing to do with your Adafruit store account. We don't share email address. We don't spam. It's ad-free. Subscribe anytime. Unsubscribe anytime. All that stuff. All right. It's open source hardware time. We have 2,734 guides in the Adafruit store. Learn, experience, site.
Yeah.
Bonanza. What's on the big board this week, Lady Ada?
Okay, we have a couple updates. CircuitPython on Linux and Raspberry Pi guide. I think Melissa just updated this because I'm trying to remember what changed, but I think it was Python version changed. So you want to update that, and then don't forget, Phil B wrote an amazing nudes Uber guide. You want to use nudes safely. You don't want to hurt yourself. Don't want to damage your nudes. Check out the Uber guide. It'll give you tips and tricks on nudes. We've also got an update to the PMSA 003i air quality breakout. I think this got added to Whippersnapper. I think that's what got updated with this guide, which is really cool because we're doing a lot of air quality projects, which we'll show a video of shortly. Next up, those are updated guides. These are the new guides. New guides.
Save that for last.
We've got, starting from the left, pardon me, the TCA 8418 keypad matrix and GPI expander. Liz, thankfully for me, it saved me a lot of time. Wrote up a guide on how to use it as a keypad reader. Don't forget, it's got a built-in queue manager, so it can hold 10 push, button down, and push release. Button down, button release events. So you don't have to constantly be polling it. It'll keep track of a couple of different events for you. It has interrupts, and it's also a GPIO expander. This is interesting. It's one of the last boards I designed pre-COVID. The original design was February 2020. And then I couldn't, immediately the chips were completely gone off the face of the earth, and I only recently got a bunch of them back. So check that out. We've also got this awesome Canary in a Coal Mine CO2 project. So this is a QT Py ESP32 with an SCD40 CO2 sensor and a servo. And what's neat about this is that this is a no-code project. There's no code, no IDE, no command line. Using Adafruit IO Whippersnapper, you can data log the CO2 levels, and then when the CO2 levels fall, the crow, the canary in the coal mine, well, it's a crow because we're gothy. passes out. I don't want to say dies. Don't read about what actually happened to canaries in coal mines. It's not a fun story. This one just goes to sleep. It's fine. It's just resting. It wakes up when the air quality goes back. But it's a great example showing how to do fairly complicated IoT action projects with sensor inputs and motion outputs, all using Whippersnapper, which is awesome. Of course, you can always remake this project in Arduino or CircuitPython, but we want to show how to do it without any coding at all. And then we've also got a guide for this old breakout. We forgot to do a guide for it. Somebody reminded us. Thank you. The 24 LC32. It's a basic I2C EEPROM breakout. Very handy because a lot of ARM Cortex chips, like the RP2040, like the SAM D5121, do not have built-in EEPROMs. It's not a common thing on ARM Core chips. Common on 8-bit micros, but not so much on the Cortexes. But you need to store a MAC address. You need to store some non-security based information. An EEPROM is a couple bucks, really easy way to do it. Check out the guide. We've got links to Arduino library examples and CircuitPython library examples. And then finally, we get to the penguin.
Yeah, we do have a little character. This is the penguin. And Penguin helps you make nice fonts for your circuit boards, such as, let's say if you wanted to have the Blade Runner font or
Papyrus.
So
I'm going to basically redesign all of our boards with Papyrus because I think it's the best font.
And so one of the things we've been waiting to do until we could have Papyrus on circuit boards, we didn't want to update our branding.
Yes.
So we finally are able to do this now.
Thank you.
He just highlighted Avatar, he clicked the drop-down menu, and then he just randomly selected Papyrus, like a thoughtless child.
So what does this do?
So what this does is it terrifies Ryan Reynolds. One of the things that people who use EagleCAD like me, or actually a lot of CAD software, have noticed is that they're great for making boards that are hidden inside of enclosures or laptops or PCBs PC cases. But if you want to have your PCB be beautiful and people see it because it's a dev board, because it's a badge, because you just like to make beautiful art, even if people don't see it, it's challenging it's already challenging enough to add bitmaps, but it's really hard to add text that uses the non-built-in font. Whatever the font that's built into the CAD software, you kind of have to use. And in that case, it's a vector font for EagleCAD. And I was talking to what I've done historically is I've asked Phil B, like, hey, can you, like, if you look at the circuit playground, Bluefruit, you see all these beautiful rounded fonts on there. That's custom done by Phil B for all of our boards, which is great when we have a popular board that I'm very proud of, like the Circuit Playground or the KB2040. But we have a lot of just basic breakout boards, and I kind of feel like I feel bad asking Phil B, hey, can you spend a couple hours on this board that's, every week I'm coming out with one. And so I said, hey, can we make a way to add, proportional font that's not the built-in vector font? And Phil B says, well, why can't you just use a proportional font? And I'm like, aha, if you try and you export the Gerber comes out as vector. It's a lie. And so I said, can you, look at, there's Buzzard, which is what SparkFun uses, and there's a couple other tools. I said, can you look at them and see, like, any way for us to use something like this, ideally something that works in place so that it's like, whatever text gets replaced without me having to, like, redo the whole board, because I'm often tweaking the location of text as well. And so what's really cool about what Phil B did is he actually parses the XML file for EagleCAD. So shout out to EagleCAD for 10 plus years ago when they moved to XML, because you can parse it out, extract the text elements.
We were on that conference call saying you really need to do this.
Yeah.
And they did. It was right before the acquisition merger thing.
Yeah. And they were like, we want to move to XML. It used to be a binary format. Extracts it, and then, whatever TTF font, whatever TrueType font you want to use, it'll actually make the font size to, like, match how big the text would be. So it's like it does the best it can to give you the same size text, and then repastes in the generated scan lined, like vector. What's the word? Not vectorized. The opposite of vectorized, rasterized font back into the board file You don't have to use a separate library file. It actually kind of like puts it in place, and then you can move the font, the text around. So you do have to avoid typos, because otherwise you have to rerun the tool. But once you've gotten the text about the size and location you want, you run this and you can have any font. So, we did Papyrus, of course, and we showed, we had Klingon, and we had...
we did. Someone asked if we, does it work with OTF? I think that's the font that
yes,
we use.
we did OTF.
Yeah, so there is a...
Anything that Pillow supports, which
this is all Python.
OTF, I think it actually probably even supports PostScript, to be honest.
So one of the things, all kidding aside with Papyrus, we picked this because we were going to do Comic Sans, but I kind of feel like everyone's kind of made that joke. But one of the things that we think is going to be interesting is, especially for people who make props in the universe of Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever else you might do, there's usually a font associated with it. So one of the things I think we're going to see is people who do like lightsabers are going to be able to use a Star Wars font. So the inside and the outside of the things that you make for costuming, for props, for fun, or anything, you'll be able to use whatever font you want.
Well, it's also like there's things that like I normally wouldn't. Again, I wouldn't bug Philby into doing, but like I'm making these breakouts for the TR-808 step switches. I mean, they're not TR-808 step switches; they're just very evocative of the TR-808 step switches. And like I'm obviously like, dude, of course I'm gonna go like. For the labeling, I'm going to go pick out like the 808 Roland font, right? If I can get something that looks similar to label the pads, because like why not? If it takes only 2 minutes for me to find the matching font and run it, wouldn't it be cool if it had that same look? So, for me, I just also wanted to improve the legibility. I think that the vector font, while it is quite legible, I do like a kind of heavier font. So I'm going to go with like Futura medium. Because I've always really liked Futura. The Adafruit logo is Futura.
Someone mentioned it'd be cool to do the like Stargate font. So, anyways, we think this is going to open up a whole bunch of cool creative opportunities for people to put whatever font they want on their circuit board.
And here's the best thing: we're only charging people $99 a month to use it. No, just kidding. It's free.
It's open source.
It's on our GitHub. It's open source.
And
go for it. Check it out.
If anyone wants to support it for KiCad, go for it.
Yeah, I don't use KiCad. That's the only reason.
Yeah, our team uses all the different tools. And just, one little, soapbox type thing. I said this on Desk of Lady Ada, but sometimes people get really gatekeepy with how they think open source should be. So for open source hardware, the way it works is you publish your files and whatever you use it in, because not everyone uses KiCad. Not everyone uses EagleCAD. Not everyone uses Altium.
Some people use
so
Altium.
Whatever the file format that you used is what you publish it in, and then you put it in an open source license. Then you put the code somewhere, and that has an open source license. And that's the requirement, because hardware is a little different. Everyone uses different things. For the folks that are allergic to even hearing that, keep in mind we get emails that says Adafruit's not open source, even though we publish all of our files. It's all over open source license because Lamore uses Windows. So there's this. They're just targeting her because she's how dare a woman does electronics, but that's the type of gatekeeping that we heard. And the joke that I always say, because it's true and it's not funny, but it is funny now because it's been a couple of years, is someone said, the elevator that she uses, it doesn't use open source firmware in it. Like how would they know that anyways? And so therefore, part of the process of making the hardware, because you take an elevator with closed source firmware, it's not open source. So it's just ridiculous. So, make sure when you're doing these things, stay away from hearing that nonsense. If you're using EagleCAD, yay, you can export as XML. No one has been stopped from making open source hardware because they got all the files and all the open source licenses that were available, and it was hardware. That's not where things break down. It's when people aren't releasing files or not putting it under a license. That's actually what the problem is. But anyways, that's my little rant.
Anyways, port it to KiCad if you'd like. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, let's do some factory footage. All right, it's 3D printing time. We're going to play these back to back. We've got two things this week. Here comes the Sleepy Crow that has too much CO2. And then we're going to do a, you guessed it, skull print speed up, because that's kind of what we
love
do.
skulls.
Kind of what we do here. Each of us have a skull.
It's true.
You can build a CO2 sensing project using Adafruit IO and Whippersnapper. Inspired by canaries and coal mines, this metaphor has become an iconic way to depict warning signs. With Adafruit IO, you can build a dashboard to log and monitor an air quality sensor. Using Whippersnapper, you can easily set up an ESP32 Wi-Fi dev board and an SCD40 CO2 air quality sensor. There's no coding required, so you don't need to know Arduino, Python, command lines, or even an IDE. Now you can use servos and trigger them whenever the air quality reaches high values. You have control of the servo and can change the angle of the horn by adjusting a slider. We set up an action to trigger the servo whenever the CO2 level reaches high values. Then choose to publish a message to the servo with a value that matches your desired angle. The setup is really easy to put together and it's free for folks to play around with. You can get the parts to build this project, links are in the description. Download and 3D print the parts to build the enclosure and the articulating bird. The Cutie Pie ESP32 snap fits into this little holder and gets secured to a mount for housing the servo. Be sure to check out the step-by-step tutorial by heading over to the Adafruit Learn Guide. The SCD40 is mounted with screws and the servo press fits into the mount. The sensor easily plugs into the Cutie Pie thanks to the built-in Stemma QT connectors. This 3D printed horn fits over the shaft of the motor and is secured with additional hardware. Now we can slide the circuit into the housing with the sensor poking out of the cutout. Assemble your friendly bird by joining the two wings to the body and create a rivet by heating up the tip of the pin. The wings freely rotate, allowing our bird to appear sad when it's upside down and happy when it's upright. The bird can then be press fitted into the shaft of the servo and the circuit can be powered over USB-C. We hope this inspires you to check out Whippersnapper and Adafruit IO for your next IoT project.
Yeah, so that wasn't a skull.
Apologies.
Sorry, the appropriate person has been fired. Heard it like Mad Magazine every time, like back in the day when someone would write them a really mean letter, they would write back and say the appropriate person has been fired. So yeah, we're firing our script writing team. Yeah, sorry. I thought it was a skull because like I think
It looks skull-like. It actually, from the thumbnail, looks like a skull.
here's the thing. Anytime we show a video, I could probably just guess skull. Like I'm right half
It's
the
like
time.
75% of the time, yeah.
I'm probably right half the time. So just say skull when
right.
in doubt. Like, okay, anyways.
Time for NPI.
You can watch 3D Hangouts every week, and you can learn how to make skulls with Gnome Pedro. Okay, let's do an NPI. Oh, you know what? Let's remind folks. This is the discount code, so you can buy stuff, save some money, and we can hire new writers for this show. We need new writers. Okay.
On NPI.
Okay. This week is. Do you think
Ocean.
An ocean.
An ocean?
And I like their logo because it reminds
cool.
it reminds me of Echo the Dolphin, which was like the best Sega game ever.
I'm glad the product is named Echo.
Well, I'm just saying.
So maybe they really
That was a
also
nice
are
game.
fans.
Isn't that, I like that game because it was like, oh, I'm just a dolphin. I'm just like helping out,
Yeah.
doing stuff. Okay.
Okay, this week I'm actually really glad because this is a product that I've known about for a really long time, and this finally showed up on digikey.com/new, and I was like, this is a really cool product I want people to know about. So this is it's a development kit, the EDK 350U and 350. There's two versions, basically depending on what frequency band, 868 or 915 megahertz, depending on if you're in the US or Asia, Europe. So what is this? This is a dev kit for, I love this dolphin. It's a dev kit for basically all of EnOcean's wireless sensor technology and energy harvesting tools. So what I like about this is it's kind of like a little bento box where you get one of each of their sensors and switches, and I'll show them on the overhead as well as their radio control board, USB key and everything. So you get like a little bit of everything and their software, so you get to really experiment with their batteryless technology. And I thought that was interesting because I looked back at a bunch of the INMPIs that we did recently, and there's one thing that comes up over and over again is low power sensor, IoT. Sensors got very, very cheap, right? You can now get accelerometers, temperature sensors, humidity sensors for under $1, which is wonderful. But then now you have to deal with them as an engineer. Like you as an engineer have to power them. You have to get the data around with them. You have to maintain and wire them, and that's actually really challenging because the moment you have something that's battery powered, as everyone knows, you have to constantly recharge it. Like you have a phone. If you don't charge it every day or two, the battery runs out. So wireless gives and takes. It's very nice for people to take things around untethered, but you also have to maintain them. And so, I was thinking about like, how do we solve this in general? One, if you have a phone, you just know you have to charge it if you want to use it. For other, sensors that we have, in industry, like I was thinking, we solved the issue of like what happens when the battery runs out of your smoke detector, right? This is a very common wireless sensor. It's not IoT, but it's standalone. But it has a 9-volt battery in it, and it runs for like almost a year. But eventually, the battery runs out, and then there's this really big challenge with, especially with fire alarms, smoke detectors, because they're so safety oriented. Like you really want to make sure they're running. You almost never need them, but when you need them, they really need to be working. And the problem is that when the battery runs out, you can't notify somebody that the battery ran out. Like there's no indicator of like this thing isn't working anymore. And so you have to notify people when the battery gets low, but not so low that it can't notify anymore. And so, for a lot of smoke detectors, they have like a beep, but like what if it's a winter home or a summer home and you're not there, or you're out for the week, you're on vacation, you come back, you don't realize that it's been beeping for a few weeks and maybe the battery has died. And so this issue of what do you do when you as an engineer have a sensor network or sensor nodes, you want to collect the data, but you don't want to deal with the battery management because, not only does it take, wireless of course takes a lot of power to transmit, and so that's going to drain your battery, but even rechargeable batteries have self-discharge rates. So EnOcean came up with this idea of, well, what if we just didn't have batteries? They were like, what if we just took out that part? Because if you have wireless technology but you don't have a battery, you don't have to deal with the wiring, you don't have to deal with the maintenance, you don't have to deal with the replacement, and you can literally put them anywhere you want in a duct behind a wall because you never have to get to it. So EnOcean is kind of famous for their kinetic energy harvesting, but they also have solar, which we'll talk about. And I remember when this came out in like early 2000s, because at the Media Lab we were like, oh my god, this is the thing that everyone's always talking about. How can we have sensor data radios that work without batteries? And so the way it works is, and you can watch a full video about it, but basically you have, it actually reminds me, I'll tell you what actually, because my partner at the time was researching these, those clickers that you use for your stove, if you have a gas stove and you have to have a little clicker, and it you press and there's this like strong click, and then the whatever the material activates the flame, and then you can use that the gas inside, and then you can use that to light your stove or your pilot light. So it's the same idea. It's like it's a very tough spring, and as you pull back, the spring activates, and then you finally reach this activation point, and the spring releases, and then you get this the coil moves, and the coil movement, the material movement through the coil activates a magnetic field, and the magnetic field generates a small amount of current that goes through the coil and can turn on your electronics. It's a very small amount. You have to very quickly convert it because it's AC. You have to convert to DC, and you have to get it to a reasonable amount. But it looks like they basically are like, look, you get about 100 to 200 microjoules at 2 volts, which might be enough to transmit a very quick amount of packetized data over radio. Yes, piezoelectric sparking lighters, correct. It feels just like that. It's not the same thing, but that's what it feels like. You have to kind of press hard. And this was a patented design that they came out with. And again, I remember when this came out, because we were like, this is really cool to see somebody actually take this theoretical. It's not theoretical. People had been doing this, but taking something to production, which would actually be usable by engineers as a module. So they've sold the ECO, the Echo 200. And this little module, you can see the coil, you can see the mechanical switch, the magnetic, and this is what does the energy harvesting. And then you match it up with a radio, because of course the radio has to be designed so it can work at the voltage and the microjoule capabilities, right? You can't take too long to wake up. You have to wake up instantly, sense the data you need to, and immediately send it, because the data is only available for that few milliseconds after the click. This is not a long-term harvester. So there's also a data sheet about this. So you can get the individual modules. And then, what is interesting is you probably have seen this. We actually had one of these Hue taps. Yeah. So you remember it was a kind of like you had to press the button and it would click, and then it would turn on the lights. So this was kind of a brilliant idea, because the Philips Hue is a Zigbee wireless LED lighting system, and so having a wired switch didn't make a lot of sense. And also, like, why have batteries that you have to maintain and manage when you don't have to? It's okay to have the feeling of, I'm clicking something to turn on and off the lights. So it did make it into popular industry. They have a bunch of different modules. Like I said, 800, 868, 900. They also have Bluetooth, 2.4 gigahertz, which is kind of cool. They have Zigbee. All the individual radio pieces, you can mix and match to make it work with your existing system. Although I think the best efficiency you're going to get is when you use their own radios, of course. And they've also expanded to not only have magnetoelectric, kinetic energy harvesting, also solar. Solar is, of course, going to be a little different, because you put it under a fluorescent light, in an office or something, and it slowly charges up a little super cap or built-in lithium coin cell until it gets to a certain amount, and then it can then burst data out. This one, of course, may take longer for it to charge up, but it can be repetitive, something that sends data once a day. And again, there's no maintenance. You can put it anywhere you want as long as there's some light. It works basically the way a solar calculator does. And there's a couple modules for that as well. There are things like a humidity and temperature sensor, and of course the built-in radios. They also have like a really funny YouTube video that's 3 hours long, where this guy, and he kills 3 hours, because he wants to say hey, normally if you have to install a wired switch and you have to pull the wiring through the wall, it takes 3 hours and 20 minutes. So for 3 hours and 20 minutes, he's just on this YouTube video. Anyways, check it out.
Available on DigiKey, and it is in stock.
Yeah, I thought I would just show really fast. I did pick one up.
Do you want to go to the overhead?
Yeah, let's go to the overhead. I'll just quickly show off.
That's what they call the unboxing.
People can see how, I kind of unboxed already. You get the manual, you get a USB cable. So this is the control board. So this is the receiver, which you would USB power, and it's what would get the data in, so you can. This is not the wirelessly charged part. This is the receiver that would be part of your data harvesting setup, or your Hue bulb controller. And then this is the solar panel.
Yeah.
with, you can sort of see the solar cells, little battery, and this is a microcontroller, an antenna. And then the fun part is...
All the goodies.
Yeah, so this is the mechanical switch. So, as you click it, it is generating a little bit of current. And what's interesting about this is it's actually designed to not require soldering. So I removed this from the back of, this radio is attached on. So there's these touch points. And if you look carefully, you can see there's these little gold pads where this would just clip in. And so, if it's necessary, you can replace this part. And then this is the clicky switch. Also, this is basically the same thing inside of here, but it has a nice two-way switch up or down. So you can have two options. And then here's another radio receiver, so you can use their radio network and use their software to detect basically when you've pressed the switch up and down. So I think it's interesting. This is you want to do energy harvesting. It's totally a pain because there's so much tuning. Like I remember talking to people who were trying to do this kind of thing on their own, and it was basically like you spend all of your time tuning an inductor and the coil and trying to get it to work exactly right, and then the amount of it's hard to measure because as you measure it,
it's probably not reliable unless you use something like this, which is built for that.
It's basically they really figured this out. So if you want to do energy harvesting or kinetic powered electronics, just get their module and you plug it in and you're ready to go.
Okay, we have a video.
Hi, I'm Walt Siskins, the CEO of Inocean. We are the world leader in energy harvesting wireless technology. What got me hooked to this company is this little device called a mechanical energy harvester. By pressing this switch, we generate enough energy to send a wireless signal. Now let me show you what our customers have built from this technology. This is an example of Philips. It's a switch that can turn off a lamp, an LED lamp, and generate different scenes, different colors. Another example is what's called a water sensor. This sensor functions on the basis of the same technology. In the back you'll see some leather rings that will expand when in water and press effectively the same device to send a wireless signal, turn off the valve, and prevent more water damage. Other sources of energy that we use are light, like in the example of this window contact that senses whether a window is open or closed. Another alternative that we use is temperature, like in this heating valve. This Inocean-enabled heating valve uses the temperature differences in its own radiator to adjust the temperature based on the control system it's connected to. Also, no wires, no batteries. Now I got hooked to this company by this device, the mechanical energy harvester. I'm curious what can get you hooked to Inocean, to our technology, and what products you can think of using no wires and no batteries.
Okay, before we do new products, code is gas sensor. You'll figure out why in just a moment. Let's do some new products.
Just gas sensor. New, 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 new. New, 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 new.
All right, first up.
Sticking to engineering. Okay. By request, somebody emailed in and said, could you guys make some sort of passive hub for STEMMA QT that's very small, that's the size of your standard STEMMA QT size? And I'm like, that's a good idea. And so we made one. So this is a board that does pretty much exactly what it sounds like. There are 7 vertical ports to make, so you can have more than 2 because usually they go at the sides. There's an on LED to tell you that it's powered, but basically all the SCL, SDAs, powers and grounds are connected together. So this doesn't do I2C address, renumbering, or sharing. I mean, everything still has to be on a separate address. But if you don't want to chain your I2C, if you want to have it be in a star formation, it will reduce the capacitance of your line, which means you can run a little bit faster, but also maybe has more elegant wiring, then this board will do it. Also has breakouts if you want to use it with a breadboard, but it's designed to be used solderless, and I can just show real fast. This is just the demo. Again, you don't have to plug in 5 things, but ideally, you would have your controller, and then now you can have 5 boards. You can see each one is getting power, and then this has a power LED as well, so you know that it's working. Just a handy, couple bucks for the wiring simplicity. Some people were asking for it. It's got mounting holes, and we made it the same size as 90% of our boards are 1 inch by 0.7 inch. So you see it. If you have mounting holes in that location, this will fit just fine.
Okay.
Passive hub.
Next up.
We now have the yellow 7-segment HT16K33 fully assembled. It's come with STEMMA QT ports for a bit, but you still have to solder it together, and now we sell it pre-soldered. So even less work, you just plug and play. You can also show that on the overhead. You can still use it with a breadboard if you like our original version, but we've been STEMMA QT-ifying as many boards as possible. So, plugged in here, and you see you just you have these vertical ports. You can chain them together, and since the ports are vertical, you can have them end to end. If you would like to have gigantic numbers of digits, you can have with the address select jumpers, you can have up to 8 of these in a row, and they're the same size and mounting holes as before. They just have the STEMMA QT, and they now come in Adafruit Black.
Alrighty. Next up.
Okay, next up. So one of the things that we've been doing during the chip shortage is finding alternatives for parts that we can't get. So one of the parts that we couldn't get for a very long time was the CP2102 or CP2104 USB serial converter, and we use it in a lot of boards, and so this was a little bit of a crisis. But thankfully we got the WCH CH9102 as an alternative, and so this chip is pretty much pin compatible with the CP2102 and CP2104. It has slightly different behaviors, which I'll talk about right now. So USB serial converter is really handy because a lot of computers have USB, not RS-232, but just about every microcontroller, your ESP32s, your Atmega 328s, your 8051s, they all have a serial port that's 3 volt or 5 volt. So first up, this is a 5 volt compatible but 3 volt logic. You can change the voltage from 3 to 5, but I'd say keep it on 3, and then you can always input 5 volts and it will be fine with it. It does have control lines, a DTR, DCD, ring, DSR, RTS, CTS, all those popular ones, which means you can use it to upload to Arduinos and ESP32s if you connect the RTS and DTR pins. You do need to have a driver. The driver is not built into operating systems other than Linux. For Mac and Windows, we have a guide that shows you how to install the driver. It is less expensive than the CP2102s or the FTDI chips, so there's that. A lot of people are starting to use this for not just because of availability, but for cost savings, BOM savings. 1 or 2 things I do want to mention because they tripped me up. One is the TX LED does not blink continuously when you're using it. Usually the RX LED does, but the TX LED will only turn on every 5 seconds for a second or 2. It's a little bit unusual. It does work, but you have to be constantly sending data for the TX LED to work. Whereas the RX LED seems to just kind of work as is. Second, in Linux, and only in Linux, the CTS pin does not work with the default driver. In the product page, I link to an out-of-tree Linux kernel driver, which you can compile and install, that will add CTS support. I verified it on a Raspberry Pi, so the out-of-tree driver does work, and hopefully it'll get worked into mainline kernel eventually. But it's only CTS pin. All the other pins work fine. I don't know why that pin was the one that just sort of got not tested for some reason with the driver. But other than that, it's very fast. It's very reliable. I've used it for uploading code to ESPs, to Arduinos, to all sorts of chips, and it works great. So as long as you don't care too much about those LEDs and you don't care about the CTS pin on Linux, this is a very good replacement, an option for the CP2100X series.
All right. Next up, the star of the show tonight, besides you, Lady Ada, our community, our staff, all of our customers, and more, is not this.
It's not this. That's right. I asked you to put this in for a reason. A lot of people like to use the CCS 811. It was a very popular air quality sensor from ScioSense AMS. And it was discontinued over the COVID break. It was revised a couple times and discontinued. Very sad. However, it was replaced. The CCS 811 is now known as the ENS 160. It is a greatly improved sensor. It still does effective CO2. It does total volatile organic compounds. It also has air quality. It has inside of it 4 individual box sensors, and it kind of uses the combination of them to do the algorithmic stuff. What's really nice is you don't need any weird firmware binary blobs. It does emit the data over I2C like as just very easily, so I was able to port this to Python and CircuitPython. One thing I'll note is it has both I2C and SPI interface. However, the ScioSense Arduino library and the CircuitPython library does not support SPI at this time. I'm sure it does work, but we test all the pins, but only I2C interface is used right now. We might eventually add SPI as well later. Hold on. I will now drop something.
That's right.
And now I can...
we can confirm gravity is still working here.
All right, so here you go. Here's just a quick demo. What is that? Another nice thing about this sensor is that you can calibrate it with temperature and humidity. So these sensors are affected by temperature and humidity because the wetness, the dampness of the humidity will land on the mock sensors and change the resistance, which means that as the humidity rises, it'll think that there is more organic compounds, or it'll think there's more CO2. However, you can, if you have a separate temperature humidity sensor, there's functions that you can tell it, here's what the humidity and temperature is in the area, and it will use that to calibrate and fix the output. Basically, like most mock sensors, they're not calibrated, so, it is effective CO2. It's not a true CO2 sensor. It's a basic air quality indicator. It does a fairly good job of detecting alcohols and stuff. But it's not going to compare with a $60 CO2 sensor, so just be aware. That said, for the price, which is about $20, it's a very nice sensor, and it's a nice upgrade to the CCS 811. And for everyday indoor air quality measurements, it does a very good job.
Yeah, probably not a bad idea to have these around.
So, very nice little sensor.
And that's new products for this week. All right, don't forget the code is gas sensor, because we just showed a gas sensor. That's how you know. We're going to answer some questions because we had a bunch of stuff to show this week. So go to adafruit.at/discord. Join us all, even if we're not around. If we're not broadcasting live. We're usually around, and so is our team. Ask your questions there, hang out, and more. Let's answer some questions. I have some lined up.
Let's hit it. Let's hit it.
Okay. All right. So the first one is, if the SAMD09 were available, would it be possible to make our own board featuring the Seesaw firmware?
Totally. If you could get the SAMD09 or SAMD10, which unfortunately is very hard to get, which is why you'll see that I've made a new version of the Seesaw firmware for the ATtiny 816, 806 series of chips. So it's under there's Seesaw, and then there's Seesaw firmware. There's another library that compiles under Arduino, which you should be able to port to more available chips. The ATtiny 816 seems to be somewhat available these days.
All right. Penguin, which was shown on Ask an Engineer, which is part of the Adafruit live series of shows. So you can put Papyrus on your boards. What is Pillow? Because
Pillow is the Python imaging library. That's the PIL. And it was, I think Pill actually got discontinued. It got replaced with Pillow, which is like another version. But basically, that's the thing that can take the font, make a canvas out of it, and then rasterize it. Okay.
A couple folks commented on how they are able to use our schematic PCB layout in EagleCAD, and they designed their own board in KiCad.
Yeah.
So that's why we put everything up there, because that's what people are doing. So, as someone said in the chat, don't listen to the haters that are trying to get you not to use the tools that you like to use. If you can use an all open source tool, train great, but it's not required to do open source hardware. That's one of the cool things about it, because you might use a Mac, you might use Windows, you might use some commercial tools, you might do a lot
I
of
once
stuff.
had a job where their first day of work, you installed Gen 2.
Yeah, you do it. It's
And it
fine.
was cool, but like, I could have just
Yeah.
gotten to work instead.
And just a little bit of history. So way back in the day, Lamore and I and Wendell from Evil Mad Scientist Laboratories, we were doing a bunch of community outreach to EagleCAD when they were called like EagleSoft or something.
yeah.
Or,
It was CatSoft.
it was CADSoft. It was before they were
Pre-Autodesk.
acquired. And we spent a lot of time convincing them for an XML export, and they did it. And we wanted to kind of future-proof these tools, and now that's one of the ways that all the file format goes there. And what, it's funny, sort of, is when people say, oh, you can only use OpenCAD or KiCad, when meanwhile, one of the things that would be great is an open file format for everyone. And that's one of the things that we really wanted for everyone, and we were able to do it. So that, I think that's the approach. And then over time, more and more people can use open tools, and more tools become open. I feel like you have to participate in some way to bring more people together instead of just shouting at one another. So anyways,
Cool.
a little bit of history, maker history. It's almost 10 years ago now. What's the difference between a continuous wave and a pulsed laser diode?
I don't know. I didn't do very well in my laser class,
I know.
but I do know laser cutters use a pulsed laser. They make little holes.
Yeah.
Maybe it reduces the risk of fire. I don't know.
Okay. Not a question, but I want Phil to know I'm going to be forcing some friends who lost a wager to watch Hackers. Good.
Good.
Next, please expand on the Switch project. Please expand on this step switch project you're working on, where you're thinking about using the Roland font. Step switch breakout for one switch or more.
Oh, just for one, just to make it breadboard friendly.
Okay. Della's tiny question: should all shop pages have a no rating available Google customer reviews overlaid on the bottom right? I wonder if it's because I'm in the UK. Yeah, the UK might actually have different
they
rules
don't
that it
allow
might
it.
block. So in the US, it says Adafruit has 4.9 stars, but with the way Google has to operate different in different countries, they may not have the ratings available. But anyways, nothing we can do about that.
Yeah.
Saying thank you for all the Adafruit does for CircuitPython. Just finished up a reflow soldering hot plate, all code in CircuitPython.
Oh, great.
Thanks, Brad. Hey,
Braden.
Bradeline,
Braden.
drop us a note if you take some photos or whatever, and let us know. We'll feature it in a newsletter. You can email pt@adafruit.com, Brad.
Sweet.
And we'll feature it. Thanks for letting us know. That's why we do this stuff. One of the cool things about Python, and then CircuitPython, and then Adafruit stuff, when you combine all these things together, you can make things that make things.
And here's the thing, soon you'll be able to use a Pico W and have it be Wi-Fi controlled, which is probably
Yeah.
not a good idea. Like, you don't want people across the internet turning on your hot plate.
All right. Also, if you're making something like that, come on the show until next week, Wednesday at 7:30. We'd love to see it. I think we are almost through all the questions. Oh. Brandon's going to be on the next CircuitPython show. Okay, great.
Yeah, sweet.
See, by the way, all you have to do is make something with CircuitPython, and you're going to be on a show. You're going to be in a newsletter. You're going to be able to have... So just to, remind
You're
everyone...
famous.
Well, just to remind everyone, it is
Code Plus.
Code Plus Community. We're not going to change the logo. Well, maybe we will, because we got this cool font now. But anyways, that's why we do this. That was cool. All right. Is there any way to get a Trinket M0 to act as a I2C with CircuitPython? I need 10 to talk. Don't want to use C, teaching some students.
Oh, do you want to ask it as a peripheral? So the Trinket M0, I don't think it has enough space to add the I2C peripheral support. However, I do know the RP2040 does. So if you don't mind switching boards to use the RP2040, like the QT Py RP2040 or the KB2040, which we give away free with some orders, it's about the same price. And that one does have I2C peripheral support. Somebody did add it, and I remember seeing the pull request.
Yeah. Okay. And you got through the questions. Good work, lady. All right, everybody, that is our show for tonight. Don't forget the code is gas sensor. I think Takara is back and behind the scenes in our Slack. Hey, Takara, welcome back.
Hey, welcome back.
I'm trying to find time to hang out with Takara because I have some important things to chat about. Just saying hi. So hi, Takara. And let me just make sure because I have, yes, I think Takara is in the chat. So I'm going to say hi to Takara in a bit. So that's our show for tonight. This has been an Adafruit production. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you so much, everyone, for spending time with us. We very much enjoy being with you. Thanks for making this one of the nice corners on the internet where we can all come together, show and share things. I think the world needs a little bit of that. Not going to wait for it to happen. Going to just do it here. And we're going to do it ourselves. And we're going to make things that help people make things and keep doing it.
And use papyrus.
And we're going to use fonts that some folks aren't going to like sometimes.
Or typefaces. Okay. Yeah. And we're going to mix up fonts and typefaces too. Which one are we talking about?
Plaids and stripes, polka dots, all of these things. We'll see everybody later. Here is your moment of Zener.
Oh.